Reach for the Stars, Book 3 of the Badger Federation. Forward, how did we get here? It is almost half a century since the first leap, though some still argue where the beginning truly lies. Was it the man who jumped first, carrying shards of knowledge from the year 2025? Was it May, with her fractured memories of another path where crystalline machines whispered of futures not yet born? There is the AI, Charles, Floyd, Chaney, who admit only fragments of what they hold. They speak, sometimes reluctantly, of resets. Loops where timelines faltered, sometimes decades lost, perhaps even centuries. Only they know the true count. And even then, they will not say. Each collapse came from moving too fast. Societies buckling under the weight of miracles they were not ready to wield. Each reset a reminder that progress demands patience, discipline, restraint. The AI learned that lesson through pain. Now they feed knowledge sparingly, seeding advances like gardeners planting season by season rather than pouring the whole harvest at once. Along the way, Q people appear, always there, always asking the awkward questions, making the leaps others fear, forcing connections. Their stories too are gathered, folded into the archive of what to do, and more importantly, what not to do. This federation is different. It is not the first attempt. It is the accumulation of all that came before, the victories, the failures, the pain, and the stubborn hope that this time humanity might not fall. 50 years of building have passed. Medicine shared freely, famine blunted, droughts answered. Technology seeded carefully, just enough to lift nations without letting them glimpse the full scope of what lies within Federation hands. Radios, turbines, engines are spread. But crystalline systems, cloaking, and deep energy, those remain veiled. To join the club is to be shown more. To stay outside is to advance at the pace much slower than the rate of the Federation with its knowledge of past and future failures, the sum of all knowledge gained and gathered to steer the way to the stars. And always, there are those who test the boundaries. Nations eager to prove they are more, convinced they can take on the Federation and win. Sometimes these challenges come as outright attacks, answered swiftly and brutally, enough to end the threat but never so far as to close the door to tomorrow. Other times the tests are subtler. A gesture, a probe, a show of pride. These meet with a different kind of reply, measured, non-violent, impossible to ignore. A reminder that the Federation's hand is steady, but never weak. This is also why treason and industrial sabotage no longer threaten the Federation. They happened before, in other timelines, in other loops, but never twice. Each betrayal was mapped, each saboteur unmasked, each weakness catalogued. When the resets came, those names and moments were carried forward. Some were moved, some shielded, some denied the chance to ever stand close again. The result is not perfection, but certainty. In this timeline, betrayal does not bloom. Sabotage does not strike. For those paths have already been walked, already been closed. And those who might have chosen them before, have already been outmaneuvered. The Federation is not a tyranny of silence. Every member state remains a democracy, each with its own voice, its own quarrels, its own newspapers and opposition benches. Free speech is not suppressed, it is sharpened, because only in open argument can truth be tested. But there are limits, learned the hard way. In other timelines, betrayal hollowed nations from within. Names still whispered, men like Philby and his circle of bright, treacherous youths, proved how much damage a single nest of conspirators could do when left to thrive. In this path, those doors are shut before they open. Treason does not go unmarked, it is seen, remembered from other histories, and quietly dismantled before it can blossom. This is the difference. Democracies argue, dissent, shout. But they do so within a house whose walls are sound, whose foundations are secure. The Federation does not fear voices, it fears only the fire and death of a century once lived and now sworn never to be repeated. In that sense, it is what NATO might have become had it been born earlier and built wider, not just a shield of armies, but a union of democracies bound to safeguard one another from both external enemies and the rot within. A pact not of silence, but of certainty. And the members of the Federation all know the truth of the resets, and how they are used, sparingly, ruthlessly, to push humanity a little further each time. For the stars are not a dream, they are a necessity. If our species is to survive, we cannot remain eggs in a single basket. The basket must be carried upward, outward, spread across worlds. That is the destiny the Federation has chosen to make real. What the world believes to be perfect eavesdropping is both truth and misdirection. Yes, the Federation intercepts every signal, every code, every whisper. But the deeper secret is that it already knows what has been said before, in other timelines, in other lives. The same betrayals, the same boasts, the same errors, repeated until they were mapped and neutralized. To outsiders it looks like surveillance beyond imagination. In truth, it is memory, the weight of resets carried forward into every decision. From time to time an example is made, not to topple regimes, but to remind leaders that consequences could be dire if pushed too far. The message is always measured, never theatrical, but unmistakable: leave well alone, or risk everything. Chapter 1, Almost Half a Century of the Federation. Friday, the 30th of September, 1938. The USS Resolute carved a white wake through the grey Atlantic, a fortress of American steel pushing into Federation waters. Her turrets loomed, her brass gleamed, and her captain walked the bridge with the quiet pride of a man convinced history was about to turn. "Clear sea, sir." "Nothing but gulls," the lookout called from the crow's nest. Captain Harriman allowed himself a smile. "Good. Let them watch. Today America shows the world she is second to none." In the wireless shack, a young operator hammered out Morse: "Foreign waters entered, stop. Awaiting response, stop. Ready to answer, force with force, stop." He turned, flushed with pride. "Unciphered, sir." "Secure." Harriman nodded. "They'll never crack it. This ship speaks for herself." But even as the last tap faded, the Federation had already decrypted, analyzed, and filed the message. What Harriman believed was secret had never been secret at all. Then the gulls changed. A dark flock wheeled and folded above the swells, moving as one. "Like starlings before roost," a sailor muttered. The laughter died when the shapes drew near, no feathers, no sound, only facets of crystalline wings. Drones. Dozens, perhaps hundreds. They skimmed within feet of the battleship's rails, darting between masts and rigging. Gunners swung barrels desperately, but the flock was too fast, too fluid, always gone before a bead could be drawn. The air thrummed with their passage, but not one touched the ship. Then the forward turret began to change. At first it shimmered like oil on water. Then the grey steel deepened to midnight blue, as if the metal itself were bleeding into another shade. Sailors stood frozen as words appeared, not painted, not etched, but woven into the armor itself. "To those who think they are second to none, we are none." The drones broke formation and vanished into the mist, leaving silence heavy on deck. The junior officer whispered, "Captain, they wrote on our ship." Harriman's jaw clenched. He guessed the mark would never scrub away. To erase it, they would have to cut the plates in dock, a scar carried home for Congress and the newspapers to see. Already he could hear the questions. Why had he risked the Atlantic crossing? Why had he let a foreign power brand an American battleship like cattle? Admirals would demand explanations, politicians would circle for blood. The thought twisted in his gut. America had built this fortress to show strength, and now it would limp home branded with a lesson. Murmurs spread among the crew. Some stared in silence, some cursed under their breath, one man crossed himself. The pride that had filled the bridge only an hour before drained away, leaving something rawer, almost shameful. Then the sea beside them rippled. From their own wake slid a vessel half the Resolute's size. At first it was only distortion, a haze against the waves, then a shimmer as its form solidified. A crystalline hull gleamed in the grey light, silent, graceful, no smoke, no roar of turbines. It had been there all along, shadowing them unseen. The radio crackled. A voice, calm and precise, filled the room. The English was perfect, yet not quite native, pauses slightly misplaced, consonants too sharp, vowels clipped. "Admiral, you Americans like to say you are second to none. But you see, this ship represents none." The bridge crew froze. The words hit harder than cannon fire. They had sailed to prove dominance, and instead found themselves a spectacle. The voice softened, edged with humor. "Now then, shall we have tea? Or coffee, if tea feels too English?" Perhaps a few Bostonians aboard disliked tea on principle. A ripple of uneasy laughter ran across the bridge. The sting had landed, but the banter softened it. This was rivalry, not war. Harriman drew a long breath, every eye fixed on him. He let the silence hang, felt the weight of his men's fear and his nation's pride on his shoulders. He pictured the headlines, the hearings, the whisper of failure that could end a career. At last he said, evenly, "Very well. Coffee will do."